since we talked about color theory and the different types of color systems that are out there, you need to pick one now. So let's review some of the ones that we talked about right before break in our online learning. We talked about warm colors. We talked about cool colors. We talked about analogous colors. I even forgot how to spell it. Those are the colors, just to remind you, that are next to each other on the color wheel. Let's see what other ones. We talked about complementary. Those are across from each other on the color wheel. We talked about primary colors, secondary colors. We talked about triadic, which are also considered primary and secondary. Triadic is what forms a triangle on the color wheel. And then we talked about tertiary. And those are the colors mixing a primary and a secondary, you get a tertiary color. There's many other color systems. I might even have been forgetting one, but the one that I'm choosing is the analogous color. So what I did is I stepped back and I looked at the color wheel and I tried thinking about what colors I really like together. You can also look up my samples up at the board, but I liked these colors that were next to each other. I picked green, yellow, and orange. So I'm going to, in the corner here, I want you to write down your colors you're going to choose. So because I'm doing analogous, I'm going to be using yellow and different shades of yellow. I'm going to be using greens, different shades of greens, and I'm going to be using orange, different shades of orange. Okay, so not only do I need these on my palette, I also need to be using black and white. And black and white give you the different shades of these colors. So as you can see here, I started to put all those colors on my color palette. Everybody is going to take one of these painting containers here, and you'll see that normally most of these colors have two different shades of them in this little compartment here. Once you get this, you are always going to need popsicle sticks. These are up at the sink. You're going to need brushes that I will be giving you that you will be putting in your folders. Okay, so we're going to have like a really nice point on our brush. We're going to be using water, and you're also going to be using paper towel. Okay, those are the things that you always want to make sure that you have. Now that you know which colors you're going to choose, to put them on your palette. Actually, this palette here, this is called a paper palette. They're up by the sink. And you'll just grab one of those, and they're reusable. So at the end of the day, you just throw it away. That way you don't have to wash it and clean it, and everybody's gathering up at the sink. We just throw it away. You're going to take this popsicle stick. You're going to break them in half, and yes, it might be kind of hard to break apart, but you only need to use a little side of it, okay? And you're going to put all the different colors that you see from your black container with all the different color choices on there, and you're going to be putting those colors on your little color mixer palette here. Okay, you can see I already started, but if you find that some of your colors are empty, ask me and I will refill them. Okay, so I have my different shades of green. I have two here. I have this mustardy yellow and a regular yellow. I have an orange. I also see this other shade of orange in my little container here. So I'm going to grab some of that too. I also have my black and white. And then I'm going to even go a little bit further, and I can make different shades by adding different colors. So like if I were to take a blue out onto my palette, I could make a nice greenish blue, and that would be considered a green. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Now, this palette, not only do you have these colors here, you can use it to mix your colors. So what I want you to do is mix colors. I want you to mix black and white with some of the colors. And what you're going to do is wherever you have a color that you start, you're going to do the same. Since this is a radial symmetry, everything is the same in a symmetrical format. If you were to do this heart in red, you want to make sure that you're doing the same color in this one and same color in this one. You don't want to do a red and a yellow and a green and a whatever. Same with this little design here. You want to make sure it's the same thing. If you are mixing colors and you have a big area of that color and you're mixing colors, you want to make sure you mix a lot, because you want to make sure that you have enough to try to cover each one of these. What I would suggest is if you're working with a big area like this and you're mixing a color, you want to start that in the very beginning of class and stick with that one shape, okay? So let's start with that. So since I have a green here and a red here, maybe what I'll do is in this area, I'm going to maybe do like a different type of green. I'm going to take like this other green here. I'm going to put it off to the side here on my palette. And I'm going to mix maybe a little bit of yellow with it and get almost like a lime green. And you can play around with mixing the colors before you apply it. You can test it. That's why I don't have you cut this out yet, because you can test it right onto the edge of your paper here and see if you like that color. All right, so I don't have a lot mixed here, and I got a big section, so I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to mix a lot of color here. People mix in all different ways. Some people use their popsicle sticks to mix, and some people use their paintbrush to mix. And so then what I'm going to end up doing is just sorry, I got interrupted. I'm going to paint very carefully. As you can see, I'm holding my brush almost like I would a pencil. And I'm trying to paint as carefully as I can. I'm trying to get around this red heart here. You may find that some other colors are a lot more see-through than others. And it just depends on the brand of paint that I have, or the colors, the pigment in the colors that you're using. So like for instance, this green next to it, it's very streaky because the paint was not very thick. It was a different brand than what I'm using right now, which is pretty thick. And you might need a couple shades of it. Okay. So I'm just very carefully painting inside the lines. A couple tips for when you're painting: you always want to use a small brush. You don't want to use the bigger brushes. I know it goes faster, but I'm going to be grading you on your craftsmanship and how you handle your paintbrush. So if you find that you're not really good at painting, I will be able to tell whether or not you used a bigger brush and you took your time. Okay, so I'm just going very carefully around the edge. I'm painting in what I see in the shape. If you find that you don't like how it's turning out, like I said, because it is very streaky, sometimes just adding a little bit of white to your color helps thicken up that paint a little bit. And of course it'll make it a little bit lighter, but my hand's starting to get shaky. Another thing, when you're painting, you want to watch at the bottom here. You can see how that paint is globbing up at the bottom. Sometimes it's very good to just clean that off and get that extra paint off. And put a nice tip back on your brush there and then start fresh. And like I said, hold your brush just like you would a pencil. It helps you to have more control of it. Okay. When you go to paint your next section, okay, think about this. I'm almost done with this area. What am I going to do next? Well, I'm hoping that you answered you're going to continue on to the next shape that looked just like this one. But what I wanted to show you, almost done here. You want to try to remember how much paint you had used on your one section here. And you want to make sure that you have enough paint. So say that I painted this, okay? I want to go on to the next one, but maybe I only had like this little paint left. And I know there's no way I'm going to get all that covered. You don't want to start off with that paint and then go and mix another color and try to do it. You want that same color here. I will have enough for this one, so I will probably just continue on to use this color over here. But if you needed to mix more paint, don't start in there yet. I would just go and try your best to mix that color again. And if it's off by a little bit, that's okay. It looks better that way than starting the color in there and then losing the amount of paint you needed and then trying to start over with a whole new color. That would just not make sense. It would look funny. So I just mixed a whole new color and it's pretty close to this one. It might be off by a little bit, but at least I'm starting fresh. Now, like I said, if I had enough here, that would be fine. I could have just used all that in here, but I just wanted to show you what to do when you get to this point. Okay. All right, so I'll continue on painting that. When you get to your next color, so say you have all of these painted and you want to get to this background color, think about things. Do you want another shade of green back there? Or do you want it to pop out and maybe have like a shade of red? Or a shade of orange. This was like an orange red here. Think about, what color you want next before you just go and do it. Because if you don't plan and you make a mistake, you're going to get upset. You can paint over things, but you need to paint over each thing. So if I didn't like how this turned out and I wanted to paint a different color on there, I'd have to make sure I do the same on these. So those are just a lot of things to think about throughout the way. Okay, so if you're gonna end up painting with like a different shade, so if I wanted to get even like a lighter shade of this yellow here, I could take my white and add color, almost as like a mint green. If I wanted to make a color go darker, I want to show you something. If I were to make this green go darker, I already have some white in it, but I wanted it to go darker. I want to show you that doing that will make it almost like a gray. So if you wanted to make a dark green, you want to start off fresh with the green and then add a little tiny bit of black to it. Black will go a long way. You don't, unless you want the color like a grayish tone to it, then add black and white. But if you just want the color to be darker, make sure you're only adding the color and the black, not white also. So maybe on here I'll test it, see if I like that color. It's a nice dark green. It's actually a nice color for doing trees if you're doing a landscape. And so maybe I'll put that color somewhere in here. And this is like actually really, really small. So what I need to do in that area is either get a smaller brush or clean all that paint off my brush, make sure that it's nice and sharp. Oops, sorry. And then start fresh. And now, because this is smaller, this is where your hand starts to really shake. And then I'll continue on. All right, that's about it.